Very good evening to you. Yeah, depending on what time that you're watching this video, good afternoon. I hope you've been having a good day. I hope you've been having an amazing week. One of the things I look forward to share in this video is based off of one of the conversations I was fortunate enough to have with the current CFO of Afrimat at the AGM earlier on in the year. So yeah, I really hope this is going to be a very informational video to you. I hope it's going to be educational, and to some extent I hope it's going to be fairly entertaining also. And yeah, that's all I'm hoping to do. So one of the questions that I have got in a variety of ways is, why do you do what you do? Why do you like talking about listed companies? Why do you like talking about the stock market? Why do you like talking about the economy and sharing information about that? So the simplest answer to that is, well, obviously our own educational system has failed us in a variety of ways, especially when it comes to equipping us with the information that we would need as we're about to enter in this complex world that we live in today. So one of the things I actually did later on in my adult life, come to think of it, I wish I did this like way sooner. I spent a little bit of time reading up on history. This is economic history, South African history, just history in general. And as I was doing that, there's this theme that kept popping up over and over and over and over. And this is the idea of what they call then joint stock companies, which is basically companies where shareholders come together and then pull in all the resources to start this company. And one of the things these books to touch on is how private enterprises or private corporations or these publicly listed companies basically made history as we know it, how big a role they played, and even to this day, how they still continue to shape, the current climate. So as I came across this, I realized, no, man, but this is fairly good information. It's surprising that we weren't taught this at an earlier age. Of course, some of it can even be dangerous information if you look at it like that. But for me, that sparked a whole lot of curiosity to look a bit further into, how do businesses work? Why do we need businesses? And the more I started digging up into this, I realized this information, not only is it difficult to get your hands on, but it's also a bit complicated to make sense of, especially for the average person. Not everyone is going to read an integrated annual report in a sitting and you make sense of it. And I'm talking of even like some of these smartest people. It's not something that's easy to make sense of, unless of course you are directly moving towards that profession. So without getting too what's the word, without getting too carried away, basically the reason I do what I do is to try simplify complex things and then try and deliver valuable information to the next person. So yeah, that being said, I'm going to jump straight into it and share my recent experience at the Afrimat AGM. Personally, for me, it was a very good experience. I can look back at it this year and be like, wow, I'm fortunate enough that I was part of, the people who were at the AGM. So if you haven't been to an annual general meeting and you're wondering what is an AGM, what actually happens there, just like what the name says, annual general meeting. This is basically a meeting that happens once a year. And like what it says, it's a very general meeting. There isn't really much to it. The most important agenda of the day is the voting process or the voting procedure that takes place at the AGM. So basically, the executives and the higher ups, they invite the shareholders to come to a specific venue at a set date. And what happens is that they would go through the different resolutions that they would have, right? This can be ordinary resolutions, special resolutions. Some of the things they would include would be re-election of certain board members, reappointment of certain executive, the remuneration of board members, the remuneration of different members of different committees. So this is basically what the different shareholders would be voting for, some voting against. In some cases, depending on the company that you do attend, it might actually feel very religious because it's like a very strict procedure, right? The chairman would be the one that would speak, and then someone has to then second that. After that, that's written down, and then eventually you go into the voting process. Some companies really take this extremely serious. Some might be a bit more relaxed about it, but nonetheless, it's a very interesting experience. So in the case of Afrimat, the current chairman, Mr. Francois Law, he's the one who chaired the AGM, and then basically went through the different resolutions. I can't remember how many there were, between 15 and 20, give or take, somewhere there. And then after the voting was done, as they were now doing the counting, then the current CEO came in to present some of the feedback that he had for the shareholders, touching on some of the highlights that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. One of them was, as we know, Afrimat, they've been listed in the construction sector or construction space, but over time the company has diversified into mining and general mining. So at some point in time, they had to classify their JSE listing, and this was a perfect opportunity for them to do that. So yeah, and then they went through as to the reason exactly why they had to reclassify their listing, because now it reflects a bit more of what is their focus. So that's one thing that the CEO touched on. They also touched on the acquisition of Lafarge, which I won't go into detail about. But one thing that stuck out to me is how these Lafarge assets were actually made, owned, or created back then by Marion Roberts. And they really highlighted that, these assets that we have, it's like very top quality assets. And for the price that they got this for, it's a steal. I had Anthony Clark, one of the gentlemen I actually met at the AGM, who's personally my hero when it comes to finance, when it comes to listed companies in South Africa. Yeah, he said something along the lines of, this could be like a deal of the century for Afrimat. We'll just see how it plays out, but yeah, that's something that they touched on, so much so that the current CFO is now going to be basically fully responsible for integrating this acquisition of Lafarge from Holcim into the the Afrimat stable. So that's something that they also shared with us there at the AGM. And talking of the current CFO, Peter David, I was extremely fortunate, and to this day, I'm deeply grateful that I managed to sit down with him. We had quite a conversation, quite a lengthy chat. I had a number of questions for him, and he was extremely patient, very humble guy, willing to answer most, if not all, of the questions that I had. And he gave me quite a lot of insights also into the business. So yeah, in the interest of time, what I'm going to share, what stuck out, to me, to this day, is this was based on a question that I had asked him, right? Trying to get an idea of the competitive landscape that Afrimat operates in, and who's basically giving them a headache, which competitors do they worry about. For me, that will give me an idea of maybe where to look, right? But his response kind of gave me a bit of insight. He was like, so in the construction sector or in the construction space, especially where they have to deal with aggregates, where they have to deal with sand and anything that's input into the construction space, the stuff coming from the quarries, that business is fairly cost intensive. So who then becomes a headache for them is the guys that are closest to the customers. And you find that in some places, it's the smaller players, the more local players who are closer to the customers. But they won't really be that much of an issue because for them, they'll be way too small to worry about them. Nonetheless, what it did highlight is what kills a whole lot of businesses in this space is the cost factor. The further away the company is from the customer or from the client, the more expensive it is for them because they have to factor in transportation cost. In the end, what product are you selling? You're selling aggregates, and these products are very, very low margin. Actually, in the same AGM, I remember the CEO jokingly saying that, in every business, there always have to be a non-profit or an NPO that you're running. And he was, referring to that space where they're running the aggregates, where the margins are extremely thin. So yeah, that's something that he shared with me that actually stuck with me for a while. So basically, the further away you are to your customer, the more expensive it is, because by the time you go to sell it, your transportation costs have eaten into what you would have made as a profit. So yeah, that was one of the learnings I also had. I won't go into much detail with the conversation I also had with Anthony Clark. He touched on a whole lot of things. He's been following this company for the past, I think, 20 years or give or take. It's a ridiculously long time. But yeah, my hope is as I gain more of this experience, as I get a bit more exposed to these kind of things, I come back, simplify it, condense it, and share it with the next person in the hope that this information becomes useful to you in one way or another. I try to keep my videos fairly short. I don't want them to go on for too long, but yeah, I really hope this is something that you'd find useful for you, or this is information that you might find worthwhile. As for you spending your time to watch this, thank you so much. I really do appreciate. I hope this information is going to be valuable to you. I'm hoping to put out a bit more of such kind of videos where I share my personal experiences and in the process try simplify some of the complex topics or complex issues that we do uncover. For now, thank you so much for spending your time to watch this. I really appreciate it. Cheers.